All right, so let's jump into it, huh? The 2025 Grammy nominations are out, and, well,
Oh,
the Grammys are always a good time, right? Always a little bit of controversy, especially when we start talking about rock metal and alternative. But we've got the official lists here, and of course, the internet is already blowing up with those fan reactions. But this time, I think there's a bigger question looming. Are the Grammys even relevant anymore? You know? In a music world, that's changing so fast.
yeah, that's the big question, right? And this year's nominations are really adding fuel to that fire.
Okay, so let's break down some of the nominees here. In the metal world, we've got the usual suspects, Metallica, Gojira. But then you see a band like Spiritbox, female-fronted metal band,
Yeah.
absolutely killing it. That's got to be a sign that things are changing, right?
Yeah, I think it definitely signals a shift. I mean, for a long time, metal has been seen as this male-dominated genre. But you've got Spiritbox out there, you've got bands like Arch Enemy, and they're really challenging that image. It shows that, heavy music is becoming more inclusive, and that's something worth celebrating.
Absolutely, for sure. And then on the rock side of things, you've got legends like Pearl Jam,
Yeah.
the Rolling Stones still going strong. But then there's a band like the Black Crowes. I mean, they had basically called it quits, and now they're back
Mm.
with a Grammy nomination. What's the deal with that?
It almost feels like there's a wave of nostalgia hitting rock music right now. Like you mentioned, the Black Crowes. You've got bands like The Darkness, even Pantera getting back together. It's like they're tapping into this yearning for a certain sound, a certain energy that people are missing.
So you've got these like established giants on one hand, and this wave of nostalgia acts on the other. But where does that leave all the newer bands, the ones who are really pushing the boundaries? Like, what does rock even mean anymore? What does alternative even mean?
Right. That's where it gets really interesting. You look at a band like Knocked Loose, hardcore through and through,
Yeah.
collaborating with Poppy, who's this like, I don't even know how to describe her, genre-bending artist, metal to bubblegum pop. That's the kind of collaboration that would have been unthinkable a few years ago.
Yeah, it's like the walls between genres are just crumbling. And speaking of genre bending, let's talk about the snubs. This is where the Grammys always manage to stir up some trouble.
Yeah, it's like the Grammys are this pressure cooker. All these expectations,
Yeah.
disappointments. And the snubs are where it all boils over.
And this year, the big one that's raising eyebrows, Olivia Rodrigo. No nominations in the rock or alternative categories. I mean, her music definitely has that pop sensibility. But there's a real rock edge to it, too. Are the Grammys just not equipped to deal with artists who don't fit into a neat little box?
It's the classic Grammy dilemma. Olivia Rodrigo embodies this whole trend of genre fluidity. Her sound is just this tapestry of influences. It's hard to pin down. So where do you put her? Do you force her into a category? Or do you acknowledge that maybe the categories themselves need to evolve?
Right. That's a tough one. And it's not just Olivia Rodrigo. A lot of people are also wondering why 21 Pilots got snubbed. I mean, they've always been these genre chameleons, pop, rock, alternative, even some hip-hop elements in there. Maybe the Grammys just don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, I think 21 Pilots represent a real challenge to the Grammys, that traditional way of thinking. They don't fit neatly into any single genre, so it makes it difficult to categorize them. And it raises the question, should an artist's creativity be limited by the need to fit into these predefined boxes?
All right. It's a question that a lot of artists are grappling with, and it's forcing the Grammys to confront their own relevance.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but before we get too deep into that existential crisis, let's address the elephant, or maybe I should say the cowgirl in the room.
You mean Beyoncé's country album?
Bingo! 11 nominations for Cowboy Carter, and everyone is talking about it, Beyoncé going country. It's a power move, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a statement. It's Beyoncé saying, I can do anything I want,
Yeah.
and I'll be the best at it.
I mean, she's basically broken the internet with this album. But what does it tell us about music today? Is this just Beyoncé being Beyoncé, or is there something bigger at play?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's a testament to her artistic fearlessness, but it also reflects this larger trend that we're seeing. These genre lines are becoming increasingly blurred. Artists are borrowing and blending sounds in ways that we haven't seen before. And it's not just Beyoncé. You've got Post Malone getting country nominations, St. Vincent's dabbling in jazz, even Harry Styles incorporating elements of 70s rock.
It's like a musical melting pot, and
Yeah.
the Grammys are scrambling to keep up.
Exactly. And that's why this year's nominations feel so significant. They're like a microcosm of this larger shift that's happening in the music industry. And it raises some fundamental questions about the future of the Grammys themselves. Can they adapt to this new reality? Or will they become a relic of a bygone era?
Ooh, that's a cliffhanger. I guess we'll have to dive into that in part two.
Yeah, it really does feel like this musical Big Bang. Like everything's expanding and colliding. creating all these crazy new sounds.
And the Grammys are like stuck in the middle of it all, trying to make sense of this explosion.
Exactly. It's like their categories are these outdated maps, you know, in a world where the continents are constantly shifting.
So if the map is wrong, what's the solution? Do we just throw it out and start over?
Well, some people think so. There's this growing movement to abolish genre categories altogether.
Really? So instead of like best rock album, it would just be best album, no more genre boxes.
Exactly. Judge the music on its own merits, regardless of the label.
I mean, I could see the appeal of that. It would definitely level the playing field.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that make the competition even tougher?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine the debates. A rap album going up against a country album, a classical symphony versus a pop masterpiece. It would be chaos, but like a good chaos.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'm on board with the chaos, but let's be real. The Grammys are a pretty traditional institution. I doubt they'd go for something that radical.
Yeah, you're probably right. But maybe there's a middle ground. Some people have suggested creating new categories, ones that actually reflect how music is today.
Oh, like best genre bending album. I like that. It acknowledges that artists are pushing boundaries.
Exactly. Or maybe a Most Innovative Artist Award for those who are truly breaking new ground.
Those are some great ideas. It would be a way for the Grammys to stay relevant, without completely abandoning their whole structure.
Right. It's all about finding that balance, honoring the past, but also embracing the future.
Speaking of the future, this whole genre bending thing makes me wonder what's next for music. Are we headed towards a world where genres just don't exist anymore?
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, with technology constantly evolving and musical influence is becoming more global. It's getting harder and harder to define those boundaries.
Wow. Imagine a future where music is just music, no labels, no boxes, just pure expression.
It's a pretty amazing thought, a world of endless possibilities. But even in that kind of world, I think there will always be some form of categorization. It's just human nature to want to organize things, even something as abstract as music.
That's true. But maybe those categories will become more flexible, more adaptable.
Yeah, like a spectrum, or even a constellation, with artists moving freely between the stars, instead of being trapped in these rigid boxes.
I love that image. A constellation of sounds, each star a unique artist or style.
And even within that constellation, there will always be those stars that shine brighter than others, the artists who capture our hearts and minds and leave a lasting impact.
And those are the artists we'll be talking about for years to come, Grammy nominations or not.
Absolutely. The Grammys are just one small part of the story. The real story is happening out there in the world, where music is being created and shared with passion and purpose.
That's a good point. But okay, let's bring it back to the 2025 Grammys for a minute. We've talked a lot about the snubs. But what about the actual nominations? Any trends or surprises that stand out to you?
One thing that really jumps out at me is the strong showing of female artists across multiple genres.
Yeah, you've got Beyoncé leading the pack with Cowboy Carter, Taylor Swift still dominating the pop world, and then rising stars like Wet Leg and Yard Act.
Yeah.
Making waves in rock and alternative.
It's a sign that the music industry is finally starting to recognize the talent and creativity of women.
It's about time. And it's not just about the big names either. There are so many incredibly talented women out there pushing boundaries and creating amazing music.
And their voices are getting louder. It's a really exciting time to be a woman in music.
Absolutely. It's inspiring to see this next generation of female artists coming up, challenging the status quo, redefining what it means to be a musician.
It's proof that the future of music is diverse and dynamic and full of possibilities.
I love that. Okay, before we move on, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about abolishing genre categories. What are some of the potential downsides of that?
Well, one concern is that it could lead to a homogenization of sound. If every artist is competing for the same award, there's a risk that they might start to sound more alike, to try and appeal to the widest possible audience.
Yeah, like that saying, when everyone is special, no one is.
Exactly. And there's also the danger of losing the cultural significance of specific genres. Genres often represent more than just musical styles. They can be tied to communities and identities, even social movements.
So by erasing those categories, are we also risking erasing those histories and experiences?
It's a really complex issue, and there are no easy answers. But it's definitely a conversation worth having as we think about how to create a more inclusive and representative music industry.
I agree. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Genre fluidity, the future of the Grammys, the rise of female artists. But there's one thing we haven't really talked about. The fans?
Ah, yes. the lifeblood of the music industry.
Exactly. They're the ones who ultimately decide what music breaks through. And their voices are more powerful than ever.
Absolutely. Thanks to social media, fans have a platform to share their opinions, promote their favorites, and even hold the industry accountable.
It's like a democratization of music criticism. Everyone gets to have their say.
Which can be both a good and a bad thing. It's great that fans have a voice, but it can also lead to a lot of negativity.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some pretty nasty comments out there about the Grammy nominations. It's like some people have forgotten that music is supposed to be fun.
It's easy to get caught up in the drama, but at the end of the day, music is a powerful force. It can bring people together, inspire creativity, and spark important conversations.
And that's something worth celebrating, no matter who wins a Grammy.
Well said.
So, with all that in mind, what's your prediction for the 2025 Grammys? Will Beyoncé sweep the awards? Will there be a surprise upset? Or maybe a tie in every category?
Haha. Predicting the Grammys is like trying to predict the weather. It's notoriously unpredictable. But I do think this year has the potential to be a real turning point.
How so?
I think we could see a shift towards recognizing more genre-fluid artists and albums.
No, that would be a major statement.
It would show that the Grammys are finally catching up with the times and embracing the changing face of music.
Fingers crossed. Okay, one last question before we wrap up this part. If you could give one piece of advice to the Recording Academy, you know the folks who run the Grammys, what would it be?
That's a good one, I would say. Listen to the fans, listen to the artists, and be open to change.
Simple but powerful advice. And on that note, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive into some of the listener reactions to the nominations and explore what the future holds for the Grammys. Stay tuned. Okay, so we're back. And we can't talk about the Grammys without talking about the fans, right? They're the ones who make it all so interesting.
Oh, for sure. The Grammys wouldn't be half as entertaining without the fans.
Yeah.
All the passion, the outrage. It's all part of the fun.
Exactly. And this year is no different, so.
What are you seeing out there in the wild world of the internet? What are people saying?
Well, as you can imagine, the Olivia Rodrigo snub is a hot topic. Lots of people are calling it a major oversight, saying the Grammys are out of touch. But there's also this counter-argument. Some folks are saying her music is more pop than rock, and she's already won plenty of awards in that category.
So it's that genre-bending debate again?
Yep. Seems like the Grammys can't escape it. But it's interesting. It feels like the conversation is evolving. It's not just about who got nominated or snubbed. It's about what these nominations say about music as a whole and the Grammys' place in it.
Right. People are starting to question the system itself.
Exactly.
And I think that's a good thing. The Grammys have been this untouchable institution for so long, deciding what's good and what's not. But now the fans are pushing back. They want more transparency, more inclusivity, and more recognition for artists who are breaking the mold.
It's like a power shift. The fans are finding their voice.
Absolutely. And that's powerful.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the Grammys need the fans. Without them, the awards don't mean as much.
True. It's like the symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
The Grammys need the fans to stay relevant. And the fans need the Grammys for, well, let's be honest, the drama.
Yeah. The Grammys are like the ultimate reality show for music lovers. There's always a storyline, a controversy, something to talk about.
It's what keeps us coming back for more. But let's step back for a second and think bigger picture. What do you think the future holds for the Grammys?
I think they're at a crossroads. They can either stick to their old ways and risk becoming irrelevant, or they can adapt and evolve with the music industry.
So it's adapt or die time.
Pretty much. And I think they're starting to realize that. There have been some changes in recent years. New categories, the more diverse voting body.
But is it enough? Are they moving fast enough to keep up with how quickly music is changing?
That's the big question. Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure. The fans are watching. And they're ready to speak their minds.
The pressure is definitely on. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring it back to our listeners. We've talked a lot about the Grammys, the nominations, the trends. But at the end of the day, music is a personal experience.
Right. It's about finding the artists and songs that speak to you. They connect with you on a deeper level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we want to know from you is, what music are you loving right now? What artists are blowing your mind? What songs are on repeat?
Yeah, share your musical discoveries with us. Let's create a playlist that reflects the incredible diversity of music out there.
That's a great idea. Head over to our social media pages. Tell us what's rocking your world. And while you're there, let us know your thoughts on the 2025 Grammy nominations. Are you happy with the picks? Outraged by the snubs? Do you think the Grammys need a total makeover? We want to hear it all.
Yeah. Your opinions matter. Let's keep this conversation going.
All right, music lovers, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the 2025 Grammy nominations. We hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned a thing or two along the way.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep the music playing.
And that is all for today. Thanks for tuning in.